too. Okay. Well, from faraway places. He's probably the furthest away from New Jersey. Do you know Narottam? No. He came to participate in the initiation. Gora Varana. And he's from faraway places. They're going to work? They're going to be okay?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I had no idea where I would be sitting here underneath an umbrella in the sunny California, looking at a mountain over here, seeing a number of devotees here and there. So I thought I'd read a verse from Canto 1, Chapter 2, because it's a nice chapter. Shrindata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantakstoya Bhadrani Vidhunoti Surit Satam. Familiar with the verse? Most of you are familiar. Now, there's one person here for sure, but we haven't met. What's your name?
Byron?
Yes. Say again?
Byron?
Byron. Byron. Almost the same as mine. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
I get Brian a lot.
Yeah. Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. So are you familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam at all? Not much.
A little bit.
Little bit. Something's wrong. Can you have a screwdriver? No, it's the microphone. This part just keeps sagging. Do you have a screwdriver?
Yeah.
No, it's just you can tighten that screw and then everything's going to be hunky-dory. You're all engineers. He's got the screwdriver. So it
Flathead. Welcome to the country.
We're all coming from Maharashtra.
Yeah, we're
I have a voice right now.
loosen up. Just bring it down.
Where would you like? I just don't want to get hit in the face.
Oh yeah, no, we're good.
You're good. My face is okay too.
Too low or good?
So Srimad Bhagavatam, just a little background for our guest here that doesn't know so much about Bhagavatam. One way of describing what Bhagavatam is it's a graduate study of Bhagavad Gita. So where Bhagavad Gita ends is where the Bhagavatam begins. It's not exactly Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita ends, but the concluding message of Bhagavad Gita is leave aside all other means of elevation and just take shelter of this one because it's the basis and support of all the others. And that one is taking shelter of Krishna. Because all the others are pursuant to and taking shelter of that one. Concluding message of Bhagavad Gita. And then the Bhagavatam is describing how to do that. chapter 2, which I'm going to read a verse from, is an explanation of how to do that. It's chapter 2 has a series of verses that are in sequence, one after the next after the next, starting from, just getting started, starting from some basic faith in the principle of spiritual life as opposed to the principle of material life. And from that basic principle of faith in moving, progressing in spiritual life, step by step by step stages. So the verse I wanted to speak about, Srinvata Sva Kata, Krishna Kata. Krishna Kata, Kata means topics. Topics about Krishna have a result. Just hearing topics about Krishna has a result. Srinvata Sva Kata Krishna. Punya means piety, spiritual piety. There's material. Help little old babies cross the street. That's piety. You do an act of kindness for someone. That's piety. There's some do nots. So there's material piety, and then there's transcendental piety, which you can't just pile up material piety and it touches spiritual piety. It's just it's another realm. Spiritual piety. Punya means piety. Shravana, kirtana. Shravana means to hear. Kirtana means vibrate. Srinvata Sva Kata Krishna. Punya, Shravana, Kirtana. That's the first part. Then the outcome, Srinvata Sva Kata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantakso Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam. The abhadras, the nice Sanskrit word for something auspicious is bhadra, and you put the prefix a in front of it, it's the opposite. It's inauspicious. All that is inauspicious within the heart becomes removed. Vidhunoti surit satam. Let's see if I can find the verse. There it is. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 17. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, or the Super Soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Vidhunoti means cleanses. Vidhunoti. Surit. Surit. Rit means a friend, and Surit means a special friend or benefactor. Krishna becomes the benefactor of those who hear messages about him when he sees that someone is eager to hear about him. Now supposing someone's not eager to hear about him, what happens? Krishna is kind in principle by his very nature, and so he helps. And he especially helps those who have some enthusiasm for hearing. And I thought to speak about this verse for two reasons. One is, in the past week and a half or so, I've been spending lots of time preparing and then speaking on the topics of what we're going to be discussing when we go to Vrindavan. just in case. Going to Vrindavan at this time, going to Vrindavan at any time is very special. Going to Vrindavan during this particular month, this Kartik month, is special on top of special. And visiting the places where Krishna performs his activities and hearing about those activities that Krishna performed in those places is special on top of special on top of special. And there's anyone who's been to Vrindavan will be able to attest. There's some magic about the place. And anyone that goes there, they can expect magic. And magic doesn't always mean, sometimes magic happens where it's a little uncomfortable. Like, something that's an obstacle on a spiritual path gets taken away. And the problem is we're attached to the obstacle. In general, people aren't attached to suffering, but they're attached to the sources of their suffering. And when that source of suffering is taken away, it's ouch. Sometimes that happens. I remember many years ago, I went with a nice devotee to Vrindavan. He had never been to Vrindavan before. Fantastic person, very brilliant person. He was a musician in the what's called, I forget what it's called, the Boston Philharmonic or something like that. He was really like a super duper skilled professional musician. You're not the noisy kind, but the very refined kind. He was a very, very qualified person. And, brilliant. The first time he had been to Vrindavan, and he had an experience that was unforgettable. He cut his foot, and he didn't know what the risks are when you cut your foot in Vrindavan. So I tried to get him to go have it treated, and he didn't want to do that. He just walked around barefoot with his cut foot exposed. He got an infection in his foot, and then it started to swell. And by the time we got to Delhi, his foot was about 3 times the normal size of his foot. And it started to swell, and he was in a hospital. And they had to fly him back special. And when he got back we lived in Connecticut, he was in the hospital for a month getting treatment for his swollen leg. It wasn't just his foot. And it was some kind of whatever it was that got in there that they didn't know exactly how to deal with it. So it wasn't a normal kind of infection. And he was delirious, and, I remember him specifically. Before we left India, he was taking a bath and left his, the way that he was carrying his passport, he left it on the outside of his shower stall. And when he finished taking his shower, the passport was gone. And I don't think a mouse ate it. Somehow his passport was gone. So it was really an ordeal. That didn't deter his determination in Krishna consciousness. He just understood a lot of purification fast. And he's, still practicing devotee, a wonderful devotee, etc., etc. And sometimes the magic of Vrindavan is quite different. It's very light and joyful and amazing. One time in Vrindavan, we went to a place that Dinabandhu took us. Some of you know Dinabandhu. And it was a place that I had never been, and I don't know if anybody else that was there had been. And we got those that came by taxi got there quickly, so we were waiting for the buses to come. So one devotee went for a japa walk, and it was in a place that it said, Dinabandhu later explained, it's a place where Krishna had, his flute did many things. Not only his flute made flute sound, like a regular flute. One of the things that Krishna's flute does is it makes the sound of Gayatri mantra. The original preceptor of our sampradaya is Lord Brahma, and one of the Gayatri mantras that he received, which we also chant, came from Krishna's flute. Another thing that Krishna's flute does when he wants it to is it calls the cows. Every day, one of the places that Krishna stopped on his way back from taking care of the cows was a grove of kadamba trees. That's how we heard the name, Ter Kadamba. In the local language, Ter, T-E-R, means to call. So Krishna would climb up a kadamba tree and Ter, he would call out the names of the groups of cows. And they would wait to hear the sound of Krishna's flute calling the name of their group of cows. And all together, the whole group, moo, and they came running because they knew it was Krishna calling them with their tails raised and their ears raised, running to go to the barn, the goshaw, for milking time. Another calling of Krishna's flute was this place, Ter Kadamba, is right in the middle of where Nanda Maharaj's palace is and where Radharani lived. Where Radharani lived for part of her life was in a place called Yavat. And so at night, Krishna would climb up a kadamba tree and call with his flute Radha and her gopi friends to come and enjoy with him in rasa dance. So not far from there is another one of the rasa lila places where Krishna would call. And the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam is a presentation. The presentation by Vyasadeva speaking through Shukadev Goswami the message of Krishna. And so just by hearing that message of Krishna, it has a way of cleansing, vidhunoti, cleansing the abhadras, the unwanted things in the heart. And it enlivens the natural tendency of the soul to become attracted to Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam has that effect. I want to read what Prabhupada writes. Messages of the personality Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification, that's that Shravana Kirtana, hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that He can be present before us personally in the form of transmitted sound, but unfortunately we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. Paragraph. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead, but anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. So I'm going to go back to this place that Dinabandhu took us to in Vrindavan. There's a gigantic tree. I mean, one of the biggest trees I've ever seen. Big tree. And while waiting, yes, Dinabandhu explained that one of the things that Krishna's flute would sometimes do is he could make it into a boat. And so, to cross the river Jamuna, the cowherd boys would sometimes get into Krishna's boat, which was his flute transformed into a boat, and they would cross the river Jamuna on the boat. And sometimes, when Krishna desired differently, this giant tree, the limbs would extend, and they could just walk on the limbs, because this was a favorite with the cows, and a favorite place for them for their pasturing. So he was describing all of this to us while we're waiting for the buses to come. One of the devotees went wandering, just like, moved by the beauty and simplicity, etc. of the place. And as they were walking about, they heard the sounds of cowbells. Cows sometimes have little bells under their neck and ringing sound of the bells. And they heard the sound of cowbells, so they looked, and there they saw cows. And amongst the cows, they saw Krishna and Balaram. This is like, just one of us kind of people. And they were quite astonished at what they saw. And the dust from the hooves of the cows, and then they just kept moving, and Krishna and Balaram went with them, or they went with Krishna and Balaram. Now, visiting Vrindavan can be a very magical place. It can be something very sublime like that, or it can be something where it's purification to the max, and whatever it is, that's what it is. And it's for sure some kind of magic. One needs to be ready for any kind of magic, because it's whatever Krishna wants it to be. And it's the same with what's being described here. This abhadras. How many impure things are within every one of our hearts? Too many things. And certainly that which is blocking us from experiencing our relationship with Krishna is things that are blocking. The abhadras, the unwanted things, inauspicious things. So when those inauspicious things are cleansed away, it's a relief. But on the other hand, it's sometimes uncomfortable. Like this devotee that had this, it was really severe. I haven't seen anybody else. Don't need to panic. I don't want to go to Vrindavan because I don't want to have a medical emergency like that. But part of it was he was just cavalier. So when you have a cut, you disinfect it. He didn't do it. He was advised. He didn't do it. being a little stoic and tolerant of discomfort. But so the process of hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam is much more gentle, generally speaking, much more gentle and gradual. And then the gradual hearing and hearing more is meant to bring us to the point where we actually have some enthusiasm, or an urge, as it says, an urge for hearing the message. One more paragraph. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are a very difficult problem for the devotee making progress in the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. One of the places that we'll be going in Vrindavan is the Radha Damodar temple. It's a nice topic to speak about, because I think at the end we're going to sing the Damodar Astakam prayers and offer to your picture. Yasoda Damodar. So the history is Prabhupada didn't start, when he went to Vrindavan, he didn't start at the Radha Damodar temple. He was living at a place much further away by Keshigat, and I have photographs of the place where he stayed. It's a little room, little bitty room. The 10-foot tall ceilings is like all buildings in India, but something like 8 feet by 17 feet. That was Prabhupada's room. And just stark walls, no toilet, no kitchen, no running water. He had been a householder with, wealth and children and comforts, and there he was in this little place. And after some time, the Goswami in charge of the Radha Damodar temple had met Prabhupada, because Prabhupada would go to visit the other temples in Vrindavan, and they developed a friendship. So he invited him, why don't you come stay in these 2 rooms? And the rooms were all run down and dilapidated, and Prabhupada agreed, to a very, very modest amount for life in writing. And then he spent a couple of months getting some funds and fixing up the rooms so they were habitable, because it was just, during those days, it's not like it is today. Vrindavan was, a very poor place. And even that Radha Damodar temple was a very poor place. So, there at the Radha Damodar temple, he began writing Srimad Bhagavatam, one volume, next volume. His plan was to follow the order of Bhaktisiddhanta. His order was to take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the English-speaking parts of the world. Since A equals B, if A equals B and B equals C, then he could give the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam by giving by giving Lord Chaitanya's teachings, by giving Srimad Bhagavatam, meaning they're the same. Lord Chaitanya's teachings is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So his plan was he would have the first canto entirely published in printed form and bring those volumes with him to America to give the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the beginning, that's all we had. And there weren't too many of them, so they were very, very much treasured. But he explained, and so every morning we had our Srimad Bhagavatam class and reading from the first canto, because that's all there was. And Prabhupada had said on more than one occasion, everything we need to know to go back to Godhead is in this first canto. Means he just capsulized so much with a range of topics, but in essence form. And then in later cantos, those essence forms were expanded, just like this verse that we read. It's the same idea is expressed elsewhere and elsewhere and elsewhere in expanded form, but the essence is here. Speaking about Krishna, so just back to, I wanted to speak on this verse because for the past 10 days or so, maybe 2 weeks, it's been morning and evening speaking something and preparing during the day, something about Krishna's pastimes, preparing to go to Vrindavan. And then just before coming here, I was in Phoenix. So one of the questions was, what's the practical application of all this for me? It was a particular topic on a particular pastime. But the practical application, in a stand back and look at the big picture, it's to be able to enter life and our experiences of life with a heart that's more pure. The practical application is experience life and do our activities in life with a heart that's more pure. And when the heart is more pure, then we can see more clearly if the heart is pure. And ultimately we can see Krishna behind all things when the heart is more pure. Even, misfortune like getting this elephantine swollen up leg this devotee had. Or going for a walk in a remote place and seeing Krishna the cowherd voice. Or anything in between. There's varieties of Krishna's mercy, whether it's uplifting through purification or uplifting through encouraging. And then Krishna disappeared. How'd you like to have that experience going to Vrindavan? What would you do if you had that experience in Vrindavan? You go running after Krishna. Take me with you. Take me with you. But that's the topics of Krishna are like that. I'll just say a couple more things and see if there's something all of you want to discuss. The topics of Krishna and Krishna's pastimes, they flow like a river. And in a river, anyone that's been by a river, there are times of the day or different times, the river is very calm. Sometimes it's very choppy. Sometimes the waves are very high. And when the waves are very high, one wave rises, another wave comes along and crashes into that wave that rose. And then they both subside, and here comes another wave, and it just keeps moving and moving and moving and moving and moving. And the mood changes. The activities of the topics of Krishna and the activities of Krishna are like that. Rasa is described like an ocean or like a river, and it just keeps moving and moving and moving. It's not stationary. The pastimes of Krishna are very dynamic, they're not static. And the mood changes, the experience of those who are participating keeps changing, keeps changing, keeps changing, keeps changing. And at the center, for the pastimes of Krishna at least, is Krishna's enjoyment. And Krishna's enjoyment is the enjoyment of his devotees. And so the devotees enjoy in different ways, sometimes even when things become difficult for them, or they make things difficult for him, and they make things nice for him, and keeps moving and moving and moving. Keeps moving. And with the understanding that Krishna is the source of everything, say it the other way. It's the same as Bhagavad Gita. Ham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. Krishna says, forwards and backwards. I'm the source of everything. Everything comes from me. Say it negatively. There isn't something that exists that doesn't come from Krishna. So if there's something that exists in this world, it has its spiritual counterpart within Krishna. So, and this way, Krishna is experiencing everything. But he's the source of everything, so we're experiencing only the reflection of that which comes from Krishna. So in hearing about Krishna's pastimes and activities, it may sound like ours, or like, a fanciful imagination of something that we might experience or want to experience, and then Krishna experiences it. Including things that for us are negative emotions, and then Krishna experiences those negative emotions. But they're not negative emotions, they're ecstasies. Krishna left Vrindavan by being invited by Kamsa to take part in a festival in Mathura. But Kamsa's plan was to kill Krishna. So Krishna went, and it worked the other way around. Krishna killed Kamsa. But Krishna didn't want to return to Vrindavan because he knew that there are many, many, many demons, and if he went back to Vrindavan, knowing that he had killed Kamsa, they would go and harass the residents of Vrindavan. So he told them he would come back after the demons were killed. It took a long time, but he went back. The last demon that he killed was Dantavakra. And the demon that just before he killed Dantavakra was Shalva. Shalva became inimical to Krishna because Krishna had killed Shishupal. And Shalva and Shishupal were buddies. So Shalva, this is a Krishna book story. Shalva wanted to get back, but he wanted some special power to get back. So he went to a remote place and underwent austerities of see if I can remember. For 1 year, he only ate a handful of ashes every day. Something like that. Yummy. And he wanted to get a benediction from Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva didn't want to give him a benediction. Finally he came and he said, what would you like? I'd like a an aircraft that can do this and that and the other thing, and with this aircraft I can do this and that and the other thing, and I'll cause terror for the members of the outer dynasty. So he got it. This craft. And then when he came, Krishna wasn't in Dwarka. At the time that Krishna wasn't in Dwarka, Krishna was in Hastinapur. And, all these places don't mean anything to you, but you just get the flow of the story. Krishna was in Hastinapur, and the installing of Yudhisthira made it final. He then became the emperor. This is before the Kurukshetra battle. In Indraprastha, the Rajasuya Yagya was performed. And so Krishna stayed in Indraprastha for some time. And after some time, to honor his Yudhisthira as the emperor. And then he went back to Dwarka. When he got back to Dwarka, he heard that Shalva was attacking Dwarka. So Krishna took care of Shalva. He completely destroyed this aerial craft and many thousands of his soldiers. So Shishupal disappeared. He had mystic powers. And with his mystic powers, he created a form just like Krishna's father. And a messenger brought this mystical person that looked just like Krishna's father before Krishna and said, your city is finished, and right before you we're going to chop off his head. And they chopped off this mystical Vasudev's head right before Krishna. Now Krishna is omniscient. He knows what's going on. But he acted as if he didn't, and he felt the emotions of a person who just witnessed their father's head being chopped off by a terrible person. And the Vasudev form disappeared, the messenger disappeared, the whole thing was just a mystic display. But Krishna was feeling those feelings. Now, how's that? Because he's omniscient. Well, he's not only omniscient, within Krishna is everything, including the transcendental feelings of the affection one has for one's father. Transcendental feelings. Because the worldly feelings come from transcendence. So Krishna felt those things. And then right after that, he knew exactly what to do. He finished Salva. Looking at, so just go step back again, the big picture. When hearing Krishna's pastimes, it sounds like, like reading Harry Potter or something. It sounds like a story, mythology that somebody made up, and it's got this attractiveness, and there's no real substance to it at all. It's just gobbledygook. But it's not like that. So worldly people may think in that way, and then how do you think otherwise? Well, back to this verse, Srinvatasva Kata Krishna, Punya, that piety, transcendental piety awakens. Transcendental piety doesn't awaken from reading Harry Potter. The quality of the person who reads Harry Potter, the quality of their life doesn't change. The quality of the life of one who hears topics about Krishna from Bhagavad Gita and onwards, the quality of life changes. That is to say, the quality of sattva gun becomes manifest. The quality of goodness becomes manifest. Because it's a core hearing topics of Krishna, and Krishna's name is mentioned in this purport, they're core activities for making the heart clean. And when his heart is clean, they have good qualities. That's the other way. When his heart is not clean, for some time they can have some good qualities, but provoke them, and something else happens. So how to stay unprovoked? There's only one solution. Just have a clean heart. Even when something is disturbing, you remain undisturbed. How do you get there? How do you make your heart clean? Hearing topics of Krishna, hearing the name of Krishna, hearing topics of Krishna, and visiting the holy places of Krishna, and the bhakti process. Does it work? Sounds nice. Does it work? Well, it worked for those who sincerely and consistently apply themselves. Somebody just sent me, last thing, somebody just sent me some recordings of Jagatarini speaking on visiting Vrindavan for 2 weeks. She's on day 6 or so forth. I'll send Akuranath the links, and you can listen to them. She's so soft and has such love. She loves Vrindavan, and she's really down to earth. She's not, exhibiting erudition or something. She's exhibiting her heart, and her heart is very pure. Her heart loves Vrindavan. It's so nice hearing somebody who loves Vrindavan, like she loved Vrindavan, speaking about Vrindavan. She knows many nice stories, but those nice stories are not the intriguing part. It's the pure heart that's intriguing. So if you can't go to Vrindavan, you can hear of those that love Vrindavan, and we'll see about sending back some recordings of seeing the places and visiting the places and speaking about the places while in Vrindavan. That's also very nice. But it's to make the heart pure. And when the heart is pure, then there's a natural attraction for Krishna and topics of Krishna. And you just want to hear more and hear more and hear more. And then there's some enthusiasm to see that other people have the opportunity to hear. Like distributing Srimad Bhagavatam for people. They have the opportunity to hear. Anything you'd like to discuss? Here we are together. Nice quiet countryside.
I have a few questions, man. I'll start with one.
Okay, he has a little portable microphone. Here comes the portable microphone.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. So, you mentioned, like, we kind of make it equal thing, like misery, experiencing misery and purification, we take it as equal. No, Prabhu, I'm going through some purification. But I'm wondering is it necessarily true? Like, for example, that like infected feet example. It's like he went through misery.
He did. He was terrible. He was delirious. He was delirious. He didn't know where he was, who he was. He nothing.
But it's like, how does that relate to the heart? That's my question. It's
Well, it depends on how you process during and after. He's a very intelligent person and very spiritually oriented person, and afterwards he understood. While it was going on, he was delirious. He didn't know anything about anything. It's being fed through tubes. It was like it was delirious. But afterwards, it was he has a natural way of just anything. It's funny for him. He laughs. It has a whole body laughter. He understood what was happening. So how do you take it? It depends on your perspective of life, and perspective of life means your relationship with Krishna. So it's kind of different from person to person, as the experiences, also how one processes the experience is going to differ.
May I ask you another one?
Yeah, sure.
Srila Prabhupada at the end of the first paragraph mentions that like to develop the taste to hear Krishna Katha depends on serving Krishna or
And his representative, yeah.
So
That's what he says.
yeah, right. So can you expand on that a bit? How does service?
Well, one enhances the other, and vice versa. To develop an attraction for hearing, that which is in relation to Krishna needs to have some attraction. Now, some persons, we're all different, which is nice, and some persons are more attracted to serving another. Some persons are more attracted to hearing, but the hearing, when there isn't the mood of service, is incomplete. And doing service without hearing is incomplete. So one helps the other. And then it's gradual and progressive. If as long as one continues with submission to that which is recommended or that which is made available. Let's take, for example, this is easy. Take, for example, Srila Prabhupada's establishing Krishna consciousness in the Lower East Side of New York City. And the people that came there, they didn't know who he was. They didn't understand who he was. And they had some attraction for him and what he was. And and some persons came and left. Some persons came and got deviated, not just So, but the purification nonetheless was there, with some, because the giving of association. The same with chanting. Take a different example than Prabhupada starting in the Lower East Side of New York City. People that hear chanting, they don't know what it is. And in the past 10 days, I've heard recorded lectures of Prabhupada saying it maybe 4 times. People may understand, they may not understand. It's good for them. They may be attracted, they may not be attracted. It's good for them. Meaning, Prabhupada had faith in the principle of transcendence. When you bring someone that's not pure in contact with that which is pure, there's going to be some effect. It can be, preliminary and, liminal, just very, very modest. But purification, let people become benefited with Prabhupada's view. Here's a little Prabhupada story. You ready? You like Prabhupada stories?
Yes.
Here's a Prabhupada story. Prabhupada was making this point, exactly this point, during a class in New York, at Brooklyn Temple. And it was July It was a hot summer, I remember, really hot. Even in the morning, it was really hot. And at the end of class, Trivikram Swami, first one, stood up, and even at that stage, he was a sannyasi, stood up and said, Prabhupada, what about when people hear chanting and they make fun of the chanting? Is that all right? And Prabhupada's answer was, oh, very good. Very good. And he was referring to the fact, at least I thought he was referring to the fact, that where the Brooklyn Temple was, right across the street was a grade school. And the grade school in Brooklyn means they have a wrought iron fence that's 10 feet tall to keep kids in, to keep other people out. And our program every day was we would go out after breakfast and come back for lunch. When we came back for lunch, it was recess time for the grade school kids, and it was every day they'd come right to that wrought iron gate and laugh at the devotees. Every day. I mean, 5 days of the week. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And it was every day. But to their benefit. Very good. So this is further story. Some 20 years later, I was passing through the Detroit airport because I used to travel with Northwest Airlines, and Detroit was their hub, so you go in and out. So standing in, waiting, offloaded from one, making a connection to somewhere. And down the hallway came a group of employees. And they were laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing and really loud laughter. And then they came to the gate where I was standing, and one of the employees stopped, dead in his tracks like he saw a ghost. It was me. And he said, you go ahead. He told his friends, I'll catch up to you. And he came right up, looked me right in the eye and said, are you Hare Krishna? And I said, it's not Halloween. And he said, oh, no. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and the schoolyard was right across the street from the temple. I said, I lived in that temple. He went, oh, no. He said, we were really bad. We were really bad. Every day that you come back and playing your tambourines and hitting the drum, and we come by the fence and make laughter and laughter and laughter. He said, yeah, I remember. He said, oh, no. He said, our neighborhood was so bad. We used to, when you didn't close your windows during your music inside, we'd throw rocks through the windows. And you leave your cars parked on the street where we want to park our cars. We burned the car. We treated you really badly. And you were kind to everybody. You fed everybody. You were really nice to people. We were so bad. I feel so bad. He said, I didn't say much. Just, you're repentant. They said, just today, as we're getting out of work and it's time to go for lunch break, I started singing Hare Krishna, and all my friends started laughing at me. You heard us coming down the corridor; they were just laughing at me from saying Hare Krishna. But ever since I was a child, that melody was in my mind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. They sang it like that. Wow, Prabhupada was right. It made not everybody had that same indelible, but in his case, it was right at the top. So he said, the parting words were, you people are really good. Please keep up the good work. And I'm thinking, okay, here's the mandate. Super Soul speaking to this person. We should go out and distribute the holy name abundantly whether people laugh at it or not, where people say, oh, you're doing nice things or not. Exactly what Prabhupada said. They may understand, they may not. They may criticize, they may appreciate whatever it is. It's to their ultimate good. So, it's a fact. It's a fact. We want to make our presentations as attractive as possible, so that the words that people will say were words of appreciation. That's what we want. But it's not always going to be words of appreciation. That's to be expected. But we should make it so that a reasonable person, the Hare Krishna people are nice. And we go forward. There's something in the back.
It reminds me of
Another Prabhupada story.
another Prabhupada story.
Yes, I thought so.
Thank you, Maharaj. Reminds me of in the early 70s in Los Angeles. The devotees, I remember we used to do Harinam up and down Watsika Avenue after Mongol Arti.
Ooh.
and of course we had some feedback from neighbors.
Yes, I'm sure.
Not favorable feedback.
I'm sure.
And I remember when Prabhupada came, the devotees were telling. And it was interesting because Prabhupada didn't say, well, what do you expect? You know, you're out there at 5 o'clock in the morning waking everybody up. He didn't even, what he said was, he said, where there is Krishna, there are demons. And he said, it's a sign that you're doing good work.
Huh. I'm surprised.
Yeah, we were very surprised. I don't know how, I wasn't there when they explained it to Prabhupada. Maybe they didn't tell him exactly what time it was happening. He might have just said, Prabhupada, we do Harinam, and the neighbors get angry
Yeah,
with us.
5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. But I just thought that was, it's always stayed with me, that, like, the point you're making, that not everybody is going to respond favorably to Krishna consciousness, even if, you know, you're well-meaning and doing it nicely. It's sometimes.
Yeah. But you know Trivikram Swami.
Yes.
So, you know, not only he stood up, but he was being Trivikram Swami. He was like, you know, with a
Yeah.
tilt in his body language, expecting Prabhupada to say, that's not good. It was the opposite. Oh, very good. And he knew, Prabhupada knew what he was saying. So, and thanks for that Prabhupada story sharing. 5 o'clock in the morning. Watsika. Okay. Something up here? You want to bring the microphone?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
There you go. Magic.
Please, so Maharaj, one thing that always constantly bothers me is this.
Always, constantly. Bothers me.
Is we are always in the state of intoxication.
Always in the state of intoxication. That's not good.
The situation is, we have this ego, pride. We get beaten up at work. We get beaten up at home. I mean, there's a lot of times you go through a lot of different situations, beaten up by friends and devotees, and sometimes you never know. I mean, and then we know that Bhagavatam reading and chanting, and we also know that it purifies your heart, it purifies, it makes you humble. But the thing is, this state of intoxication is so strong that it takes us away from the good things that you just teached us about. So how do we kind of get over this situation. And we have taken vows that, there's 4 vows and 1 vow is no intoxication. But the problem is getting over this intoxication is so difficult.
Well, the vow of intoxication it sounds like you're using the word in 2 different ways. So when you say no intoxication as your one of the 4 vows, does it mean, or what does it mean? Does it mean that your material contamination is now given up forever? Is that the no intoxication vow? What's your question is a little confusing to me.
So yeah, no intoxication means just not drinking, but it's all the other things like you have your ego, you have your anger, you have your
Well,
pride.
that's not the vow.
Okay.
The vow is the first one, not the second one.
Okay. So no intoxication means no drinking only.
Well, no drinking only. You know the answer. Why are you asking this question? I'm confused by your question.
So Maharaj, we are in the mode of because
Intoxicants, that which is physically an intoxicant. Physically an intoxicant. And there's categories of physical intoxicants. Nicotine and alcohol and so forth and so on. Those are intoxicants, and we're vows to not do that intoxication program. So it's not, I have no more false ego and no more anger and no more, negative emotions, because they're intoxicating me. That's not what it means.
okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. Something else? Anybody in the back? Yes, all the way in the back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In your lecture, you talked about a point where you mentioned that Krishna, whenever we experience or devotees experience negative emotions, those are also experienced by Krishna.
It's not what I said.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood.
What we experience is a perverted reflection of that which comes from Krishna. Because within Krishna is everything. So Krishna may have some moments out of transcendental bhav or spiritual emotion where he feels grief or he feels the other emotions. But it's not like we have. It's not, his is like ours. Ours is a perverted reflection of his. Because within Krishna is everything. They just reverse the order and you're fine. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Radha Krishna, you want the last word?
That's the last one. I have another. Maybe I didn't like. Does it work?
Did you go to press the button?
Just keep going.
So this friend of yours that this incident happened to his feet.
Yeah.
He was not a devotee, was he?
Oh, yes, he was a
He is
devotee. Oh, yes,
Okay.
he was a devotee.
Okay. So my question.
Can you do the magic and make it happen?
Sure. Yeah. It is on.
Okay,
It is on.
good.
So my question is: does material conditionings, like for example, the family that a person is brought up, the environment that he's been exposed to, do you agree that it helps? It's like some person who is like crazy and lazy
It
versus a
depends.
person.
Whether it helps or not depends. And what does it depend on? It depends on what's at the core of your heart.
So what I wanted to end up is like, is there room for cultivation of material qualities? Like, let's say compassion, right? It's like watching a movie or reading a book that stirs, it's like the compassion. Oh, it's like that person gave his life for this cause. It stirs some emotions within us. Does that, lightening of the heart, does it, is there room for that? Does it help in process of bhakti?
You've heard Prabhupada's lectures, right? What would Prabhupada answer that?
It's material, so it's temporary.
He'd be much stronger than that. Now, turn your question around and say, here's a devotee X, and devotee X realizes I'm very poor in this quality, the quality of compassion. So is there a place for devotee X to not go read a book or watch a movie, but internally try to develop a quality such as compassion or truthfulness or whatever it is, good quality, in service to Krishna? Because there are verses, there's a celebrated verse in the Bhagavatam which says that for a devotee all good qualities become decorations. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana, that one. Sarvayar ganesh tatra sama sute sura. All the good qualities of the suras become decorations for a devotee. So maybe I don't even need to try to become truthful or, any other good quality, compassionate, kind, careful in my speech. I don't have to try for any of that. I just have to become a nice devotee. And all that's going to become my decoration automatically. Or I want to come before Krishna and see Krishna smile. And I know one of the qualities that make Krishna smile, of course, is my devotion. But if I can do these kinds of activities that makes Krishna smile, I want to be able to please Krishna that way. So if you put the horse before the cart, then fine. If you put the cart before the horse, so make sure that the bhakti is in the foreground. That is, pleasing Krishna is in the foreground. And then acting in such a way that Krishna will be pleased will follow that one. Then it's sustainable, and durable, and continues to grow. And otherwise, it's now you see it, now you don't. The compassionate person doesn't get respect, and they become angry. Have you seen it? I've seen it.
You gave an example of this philanthropic person was telling you that he did such and such in Africa and
Yes.
temporarily got.
When he didn't get honor, he flipped. Because he wanted honor. So, that's part of fuel in his tank. No harm doing. But who's to be pleased by that? So you put the horse before the cart, and all good qualities follow, including wanting to develop them, because Krishna will be pleased by those qualities. Okay, so what's next? Something's next. What's next?
We're going to go inside for the installation of Ladu Gopal.
Ready? Who's Ladu Gopal?
Yeah.
Yours. Okay. And then Damodarasakam, right?
Yeah.
You have the room enough for all of us in there?
Yeah, we'll just, it'll be Krishna magic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Krishna's magic. I'm ready.
yes. We'll take. Shri Bhatswami Maharaj ki jai.
Thank you.